Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
You can go to a marathon, probably one of the big ones, and then you can be one out of probably 20 or 25,000 people who finish. But if you finish a world champ, you're going to be one out of 40 or 400. And that's pretty special. Not many people can do that. So it doesn't matter that you finish on the top or in the podium. But if you finish a world champs, if you finish an expedition race, a 4 or 5 day expedition race, you are part of a very small group of people in the world that can say, I finished something like this.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome to episode 88 of the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. Today's guest is Santiago Lopez, the race director for the upcoming World Championships to be held in Ecuador. Our first episode of 2024, we're kicking off a series of episodes, hopefully one a week for the next 8 to 10 weeks, highlighting races from across the world and racers of all stripes and abilities. We're delighted that you are here. And you'll note that when the episode starts, Santiago and I are in mid-conversation. We begin by talking about, as you would expect, Arthur the King, the upcoming movie coming out March 2024 with Mark Wahlberg that chronicles an adventure racer and a dog and a big race, and it's going to be a big splash. And if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably already heard about it. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of The Dark Zone. We're delighted that you are here. Thank you to Jade Eagles from Wealth Garden Financial Services for sponsoring this episode. Jade is a fellow adventure racer who first started in Australia 15 years ago and recently completed the World Championship in South Africa. His other passion is helping individuals and their families establish a positive relationship with money and partnering with his clients to plan for a financially secure future. To learn more about Jade and his financial planning practice, The Wealth Garden, please visit www.thewealthgardenfs.com and drop him a note. That's www.thewealthgardenfs.com. As a listener of The Dark Zone, you know that we support Ascend Athletics. We encourage everyone to head over to ascendathletics.org and check out their new initiative called Invest in Her, an investment in the future of girls in places where access is limited. Ascend Athletics does a great job working with young women in Afghanistan and Pakistan through education, climbing, and other opportunities. We encourage all of our listeners to visit ascendathletics.org and check out Invest in Her. Thank you for being a listener, and thank you for supporting Ascend. And remember, Ascend pays nothing for this sponsorship. We like what they do and are proud to pass along word of their good work. The Arthur effect is going to be real. That
totally.
movie's going to be really popular.
It's going to be really popular. It's going to help a lot. Not only ARWS, but adventure racing. It's going to be easy for us, just to tell people that what is adventure racing, which is difficult sometimes. When I go to sponsorships and it's like trying to explain them, what we do is not so easy. But if you have a movie and if you can, you can just show them the teaser and they'll be like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, I was speaking to a couple of the race directors on another interview, and they were saying how one of the biggest challenges they have is twofold. One is explaining the sport to people, right? Because it's hard, it doesn't easy. And the other part too is local towns, local cities, they don't grasp. They only hear of 35, 40 teams. They only hear of 200 racers, 460 racers, and they think it's a small event. They don't realize the worldwide reach of the event. Yeah. And they also don't realize that a lot of the event discussion happens after it happens, right? Not before. And so that's a thing. So I do think Arthur the King is going to do a good job helping to, with this, like, have you seen the movie with Mark Wahlberg and the dog? Yeah. That's adventure racing, right? That's going to help us a lot.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It's going to be hopefully a game changer. I really hope that it's going to change things. But yeah, it's starting with Haiti, in Africa. I just felt that it was, a really big thing. Africa was really amazing. The energy, you just felt the energy in the people. And that was really inspiring because at some point, it just felt like adventure racing was not growing. We are a small niche, but still, it was not growing, and it just felt that we got the idea that probably could disappear sometimes. But now it's different. I think that is growing. There's a lot of energy, new teams, young teams, which is probably the best thing that can happen to the market because no new people is coming. And the regionals. I remember we spoke about regionals with Craig and Louis in China, probably 8 years ago. And it was a project. And I think that this project, bringing regionals and making them happen is awesome. And also A1. I mean, A1 is doing a good job too, because it's spreading the voice, making people just to get in love with the sport, because it is not an easy sport. It's very difficult to do.
No, it's a complex sport. I agree with you that the adventure racing, and I've been kind of hanging around the sport now for over 10 years, right? So I've sort of seen it, and I think for me, from my perspective, the best growth in the sport is coming from the fact that there are a lot of race directors who love the sport, are racers themselves, have raced a lot, and they want to turn around and give quality events out to the public. And in so many ways, adventure racing is a true meritocracy, that if you put out a bad product, you put out a bad race, you wither away, you die. People won't return to your race. But the fact that we're seeing, the shorter races, 6, 12, 24s, the 48s, the 30 hours, and then you're seeing the expedition races doing well, and you're seeing all that growth. And to your point too, the ARWS platform has done a really nice job, elevating it and the conversation around it. And so I do agree with you. I think we're heading towards a bit of a sweet spot in adventure racing that we need to take advantage of. We need to enjoy it.
We need to make it grow. I think that the platform begins with national teams, and when you go to a place where there's no culture of adventure racing, there's no teams, and then you try to struggle, kind of struggle to have one or two. It is difficult that you can repeat in the same place because you need the structure, you need the base. If you have the regionals, you start to grow with a group of young people that probably they cannot do a longer race, but you can start with small races, probably very short races. Even orienteering is good because they stop having fear of the map. So They take a map, they play with the map a little bit, even kids, and they realize that it's not so difficult. That is actually pretty interesting. So once they play with it, they bring more people, they make teams, and then you start growing, step by step. And once you have a national market, then it's interesting because then you can have bigger races. You can make the snowball, to make bigger. So people can, get really, really into the sport, and then, then start planning international trips. That's probably an example of what happened in Ecuador, because we've been doing this for 20 years already.
Right.
And we started with, Huairasinchi was a stage race. The first edition, 2003. It was a 2-day race. It was a stage race, but we repeated the race same year. We made it 3 days, a stage race. And then next year, 2004, we made the first nonstop race in Ecuador. 20 years ago. So yeah, we started with the big one, but then we realized that we needed more people, to start, falling in love with the sport. So we started to make small races and just to make the people to figure it out, and try to understand that the sport is not so difficult and it's not so scary. Sometimes people believe that the adventure racing is very scary because they just see, the social media, and sometimes it looks scary. I mean, people just sleeping everywhere, with blisters, and it kind of make you feel that, probably I don't want to be there. But once, they realize that it's a totally different experience, and you can actually enjoy being an adventure race in an expedition race, then it's a game changer, because they can spread the word, they talk to other people, the markets start growing, and then you have a base. Then you have a group of people that, is going to grow with you, is going to tell another people that adventure race is good, and then you start building new teams, young teams, and that's what happens now in Ecuador. We had 2014 in the World Champs, we had 20 teams, Ecuadorian teams, and now we have pre-registered 37. I think that we're going to get to 40, which is amazing.
You're going to double the size. Right. So in 10 years, you'll double the size of the field.
Totally. And it's a small country. I mean, our market, our sport market, is a country that has only 12 million people, a little bit more, but it's a small country compared to Brazil, Argentina, obviously, Colombia. So, I think that is something that is easy to reply, probably, or to, some people can just grab these ideas and probably start building the regionals in their countries, so they, grow the market, grow the number of national teams, and then they can just, think of doing an adventure race, an expedition adventure race that can have a strong national base.
I think you're right too. I think adventure racing is a funny sport, because on its face, when people see it from the outside looking in, and we have to be careful how much we talk about this in the media, how much we kind of play up the suffering and the pain, and it's a strenuous activity, and people, and they see a combination of factors come together between the wear and tear in your body, the sleep deprivation, the physical effort, and in some parts, the scary parts of the race, like the mountain biking and the ropes. And they say to themselves, like, I could never do that. I could never be part of that. And the point that you're making is that if we create race distances that feel accessible to the athlete, the beginner athlete, they'll tap into that race distance. And then from that distance, they'll then branch out into larger and larger events, or they might just stay at a certain distance for as long as they want. For example, like the people who are runners. There are some runners that they don't run more than a 10K, any more than a 5K. They're never going to go to a marathon distance, but they might run 10 5Ks a year. And so to your point is by having those accessible events. And also, too, is we can't forget that people only have so much time and resources and the money to do these big races. It's a big commitment to go do a 30-hour race, to do a 5-hour race. But you could do a 6 or a 12-hour race on a weekend. You can go and spend one whole day getting to it. And so your point is just build it in over time. And I remember when I raced down there with you, I was there in 2021. I remember the race in Ecuador, how we were the only American team. There were very few North American teams that were there. We were one of them. And it was a huge Ecuadorian vibe. It felt like the Ecuadorian National Championships. That's what it felt like that to me.
But they come from all over the country. Most of the people come from Quito, but you have races from all over the country because it's been there for a long time. And the structure of adventure racing in Ecuador is not that we have an association or a federation. It's more like it's a group of people that we know each other. It's a community,
right?
And this amazing community is awesome because we talk to each other. Sometimes we make groups of a focus groups of few racers, and we ask them, okay, what we need to change? What do you think that it should change in the races so we can make them better for you, so they can grow and they can plan to grow and probably plan to race an international race in a couple of years. So that's what has worked for us, and I think that is going well because now we see a lot of Ecuadorian teams going abroad. In Africa, we have 4, and that was probably the best, the biggest participation of Ecuadorian teams in a World Champs, and it was far away. I mean, really far away from Ecuador. So I'm really excited about the future, even though we've been there for 20 years. But I'm really excited about the future because I see that the sport is with a momentum that can make it grow, and I see new teams, I see young teams, which is also really exciting because these tell us that, the sport is not going to die, it's going to grow. I'm really happy about it. About the distances, I agree with you that, short distances can be a discipline by itself. Probably the shorter races, probably the sprint races, the ones that last 10, 12 hours, row gain races, they are awesome. They're awesome. They're very explosive races. You need to really be really strong. Focused, strong, and you have a good navigator. And we have some of those here. We do one that is a regional race, and it's a 12-hour row gain race, and it's so much fun. Teams just enjoy it a lot. But it's totally different than racing an expedition race. And sometimes I tell to teams, expedition race is probably easier in, if you talk about, physical aspect of adventure racing. Mm-hmm. You need experience. I mean, you need to know your gear. You need to know that you're going to be there for many days. But, regarding, the preparation of your body, it just needs you to be, be willing to be there for a long time.
Well, right. You have to have, right. To your point, like I think probably one of the hardest distances to race is probably 30 or 48 hours. Mm-hmm. Because, and the reason being is it's a combination of explosive, like you shared, right? Like you wouldn't really stop much during a 30-hour race. A 48-hour race, you'd make a judgment call about rest and about sleep. But if you're racing for 5 days, if you're racing for 6 days, you just have to be steady over that time. And that's where the steadiness will benefit you. The health, the fitness will benefit you. But if you're doing a shorter race, the minute that gun goes off, it's full gas until you get across the finish line. And so it's funny to say it, but a longer race is sometimes an easier race depending upon what your skill set is.
And if you see the average age, we saw the numbers of Africa, and you have a pretty big number. I mean, 45, 40, 46. It was the average, with many teams, above their 50s, and you can tell, those people are not really fast, but they can resist. They take good decisions. They can be there for a week. So that's what you need. I mean, you need to have both. You need to have this. This sport is so awesome because you can have these sprint races. You can have 2-3 hour races really fast. You can have the middle. You can be 12 hours. Probably the 30 hours. What you're talking about is an interesting race because you need to plan with a lot of the strategy, sleep strategy, and then you can have the expedition races. But it is like trail running. You've probably seen how trail running has developed over the years. Mm-hmm. And trail running, is not only the ultra trails, it's not only the 160 Ks. You can race a 50 Ks, and now people that is specialized only in shorter races, in shorter ultra races, and they are just racing that because they're specialized in that. I think that adventure racing has the potential to have more teams because they can actually specialize in race different type of distances. And in the future, probably some teams will decide. They'll be like, okay, let's do an expedition race because it seems like it's interesting. You need to be there for a week, but probably some other people will be like, okay, no, I want to do a Rogaine, probably a 24-hour Rogaine. That's for us.
Right.
USARA does a lot of it.
Yes.
And I really like how it's developing because it has now a little bit more of a structure, and I can see that in the United States you can have all the options available, so people can decide what to do. That's awesome.
That's one thing you see if you go over to the ARWS calendar or even the USARA calendar. You're seeing it too in Central and South America. You're really seeing how these the nations are starting to build all these different races, and then the race directors are working well with each other. And the amount of races that I could cover, the amount of races I could talk about it's every other week. I feel like I hear about a race that was very successful that I never heard about before. And at one point I could probably tick off most of the races that were happening in general around the country, not all of them, but my ability to wrap my head around those races has actually gotten larger and larger and larger. And I think, to your point, people are migrating into the sport because it seemed to be a welcoming sport, and race directors are doing a better job with the racer experience. Like there's the barrier to entry, the bar you have to jump over to come to a race, rightfully so, is low enough that people of fitness and of desire and of want could access a race, and there's a race available for them. If you read the history of adventure racing and the way that it started, it's the way it was then. If you missed a checkpoint, you were out. The race was absurdly long. If you got left behind, you got left behind. And race directors, to their credit, are bringing more people into the sport by making it much, I wouldn't use the word easy. It's not the right word to use. I think accessible is the word I want to use. Make it more accessible.
Accessible and actually enjoyable. And you can, when I participated this year in Africa, I just felt that it doesn't matter. It didn't matter that if, I missed a checkpoint, or probably if I made the short course, I knew that I was going to be able to finish the race, because, there was the finish line was available. And that's very important. That's really, actually, it's a game changer. It makes, don't give up in the route, because it just gives you, this energy that the finish line is available for you.
Right. It's waiting for you. You just got to get yourself to it.
Yeah, totally. So race directors are changing. Yeah. The sport is changing. The times are changing. And I agree with you. I think that we need to make them more available, more doables, especially the finish line. So you can get the motivation of racing, and just because you don't mark a checkpoint, just be out of the race.
Right. Well, so let's back up a little bit. So you were in South Africa. Now, first of all, let's back up a whole lot. You're probably one of the more active race directors over decades, 2 decades of experience, very, very successful in Ecuador. Next year, for the 2024, you are the race director and the host of the World Championships. But let's back up a bit more. This year, you were in South Africa at this year's World Championships. Were you there as a spectator, or were you there as a racer?
I was there as a racer.
So let's not even talk about Ecuador yet. Let's talk about South Africa. Who did you race with, and how did your race go?
Well, it was amazing. The experience was great. I started to race again because I raced before, like 10 years ago. I raced Untamed New England. I raced Bossy, Colombia a couple of times, and I raced in Chile too. But I stopped racing for a while. I have small children, so I stopped racing for a while. And it just hooked me again last year in Panama. And I started racing with a team with Packraft Ecuador, and then we had a blast. We enjoyed the race so much. I really love to be part of the race again. So I decided to race with the same team in Ozark this year. And we had an amazing experience. Ozark was one of the best races, how they managed to organize the race. Jason and Danny, they made an amazing job. So I felt in love again with the race. So I decided to build a team to come to Africa. I needed to be in Africa because of the promotion of the World Champs that we have in next year. So, I didn't want to be just an spectator, because I've been in many adventure World Championships and as an spectator, and I didn't want to be an spectator this time. So I decided to make a team. Rodolfo, which is my partner, my lifetime partner, he's been with me for 20 years already too. He decided to join the team, which was amazing. And also we have 2 young, amazing guys, Vanessa and Andres. And these 2 guys are expert mappers. They are working with us with maps, and probably the teams that raced Huairasinchi this year, they can tell you that, maps are much, much better, because we are doing a work from scratch. We're actually using, all the technology available just to make the maps top, probably the best maps available they are. And we're, just working a lot to make sure there's every single trail on the map. So they are doing an amazing job. They have a lot of energy. They're much younger than us. So we made a team of, 2 older and 2 young people. And the expectation here in Africa was to finish the race and enjoy. And we did. I mean, we We did. We had a blast. We spent 53 hours in the second trekking. So yeah, we, we took our time. I mean, we slept when we were tired. We took care of our feet. We ate a lot. We had fun in the TAs, and we finished. And we finished in the top 50, which is also unbelievable. So we really we had a blast. We didn't have this sensation that probably some adventure racing has of being super tired with the sleep monsters, and then you want to sleep everywhere. We didn't have that because we ended up having good places to sleep, being dry. We took care of ourselves a lot, so we enjoyed it. And I think that this helped a lot just to motivate a lot of Ecuadorian teams actually, to enter the World Championship, because they saw us, as an organizer. But we finished, so they are okay. If they finished, probably we can do it.
Yeah, and to that point, the idea that not only are you a race director, but being a racer yourself, that gives you instant credibility when you discuss the race with other racers, right? It's one thing to be a race director who never gets it on the course. It's one thing to talk a bit about it. And so, to your point, the fact that you had that experience, and you mentioned that 53-hour second trek. I remember watching the dots from my basement back in New Jersey, and I remember seeing how when that bad weather came in, that all of the teams just got off the course and they all found some place to get warm, and there were you could see farmhouses where there were like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams all sort of gathered around until the weather passed and you were back on the course. And I respect your approach to it, realizing that it's a long race. It's a race of attrition, right? It's going to eat teams alive. And, God bless the Estonians and Safin and Vitaraid and Bend and all those teams, like more power to them to get out there and go full guns right away. But you make a good point that with 2 older racers, 2 younger racers, you had to play to your strengths, right? And realizing you spent a lot of time out there. As a race director who's doing that race, as an experienced race director too, you're always on the hunt. You're always on the lookout for things that you could learn about race directing that you see what other directors do. When you reflect upon the experience in South Africa, from the pre-race, the race, and the post-race, what did you learn that you're going to apply to Worlds coming up? Yeah, well, first of all, it's beautiful that we have a lot of diversity in the race directors also, yes, in the ARWS. And this diversity of how they think, how they approach the sport is also rich. It's very good because you can have a lot of differences that are not actually bad. The standardization of the sport is good in some areas. Probably we need to, work more with the standardization of some things, probably safety rules, etc. But the diversity of the terrain, actually, it gives you, and the culture gives you, what is amazing of every race. Every race, it has to be different. Right. And I think that Stefan and Haiti, they did amazing. We knew that Stefan was going to do a long race with long stages. So we kind of got ready for that. But it just surprised me the TAs were on spa. Right. Yeah. Well, I heard they were almost too comfortable. Yeah. Yeah. Like some racers were like, we got to get out of here. Like, this is like, all of a sudden we sit down by the fire and you just burn through time. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And so we had to take care of that because we saw the fire, we saw the comfy, chair next to it. And it was just calling you, please sit here. And we were like, no, if you sit there, you're going to stay there forever. Stay away from the fire. Never go near the fire. That's always. For everybody out there, renter racing, do not go near the fire. But you found a fire and you found a place to stay in every TA. So that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. Sometimes, you have to put that in a balance because sometimes I felt as a race director that we needed to go much further, in the stage just to get to a nice place. And probably sometimes it's not the best decision because, it was probably too long. Right. Too long just to get to the nice place. Probably you can put a TA in a place where, it's not too comfy, but then you don't have to do this extra 20 Ks, trekking in a not so nice area.
So it's a thing that you have to balance. But I think that Stefan and Haiti made an amazing job. The finish line, the media, the camaraderie, the energy. I mean, the energy of 109 teams in the same place from all over the world.
It was funny when
unbelievable. I never felt something like that before. And I've been in many adventure world champs, and I've never felt something like that before. So that's, going back to what I said at the beginning, I think that this race changed things because the energy of adventure race just changed a lot. And I think that's from this point, from this world championship, things are going to just grow. The movie obviously is going to help. And we have the bar pretty high because we need to do something different. Obviously, it's going to be different. Ecuador is different. We've been doing this here differently. But, the bar is pretty high. And I think that we have this challenge and we are going to make it nice.
In regards to the media, one thing that Stefan did really well alongside, with the Dark Zone was that we sat down, the two of us, and before the race started, he did a full course overview where he sat down with me and he talked about every single part of the course. And then the day the race started, we released that episode. So people sitting at home could listen to an overview of the entire course from the race director. And then when they followed the race on the tracker, they understood what was coming next. They understood what was happening for the racers. So I'm definitely going to be on top of you before Ecuador, that you and I, if I'm not down there, you and I are definitely going to have a chance to sit down and talk about the course itself and really get granular, talking about the distances and talk about the different disciplines and things like that. And so the three people you raced with in South Africa, are all three of them involved in the planning for the World Championships in Ecuador?
Yes.
So that's a really good, that's very good news, because besides the fact that you have an excellent reputation as a race director, the fact that you have three members of your team alongside you who have seen such successful worlds being run, you're going to carry that energy into Ecuador and to put that together. So getting a bit into Ecuador itself, when I had the opportunity to race there, I know that we were very high. We were up in the mountains. I think that first day we went to 14,000 feet. And thanks for doing that. I appreciate that being the first day of the race. I know that Ecuador has a very, very varied terrain. Without giving any parts of the course away, is this going to be a high race up in the mountains? Is it be low in the jungle? How are you talking about it publicly now?
Yeah, at the award ceremony at the end of Africa, I stood in the podium and I said to everyone, okay, we know that Huairasinchi 2014 was pretty high, and it was a very long race also, but it was linear. It was totally linear. We crossed the Andes in latitude 0, so we crossed the Andes in the equator. This time we were going south. Southern part of Ecuador is still, we have the Andes still, but the Andes are much lower. So the altitude, the highest elevation up there is not as high as in the north. So we're going to have some passes. We're going to cross some high areas, but it's not going to be that high. And it's not going to be something that is going to change the course of the race. I think that teams, many teams have asked me, okay, I need to acclimatize. Yes, because you're going to be high, but you probably don't need to be here for a month. You probably need to be here for a couple of days before, because this passes, these mountains, this area in the Andes, you're going to go up, you're going to cross, and then you're going to go down again. So
right, you aren't living at that elevation, so it's about getting up and over the top of it. Yeah,
we're not staying there for long periods of times in the stages, and most of the stages are planned to be in lowlands. So you are going to be in a very rich and diverse area with a lot of forest, jungle, some very humid terrain. It can be cold at night, but it can be very, very warm also during the day.
Yeah, it's you're basically in Ecuador. It's that combination of jungle, wet, humid. Yeah, that's like that. You get exactly what you get when you're racing Ecuador.
Yeah, and it is a small country, and the beauty of being small is that you can cross the Andes and you can be in the coastal part or in the rainforest pretty easy and pretty fast. So what what people can expect from the World Champs next year is a lot of climate variation, a lot of terrain variation, and a lot of diversity. If someone asked me, well, what I should bring to Ecuador is, well, you have to bring clothes, for different from different temperatures and weather, but also you have to be aware that you're gonna be able to see the most amazing birds and animals. And if you pay attention, you're gonna you're gonna see frogs. You're gonna see, different type of toucans, and it just blows your mind, because at night when it gets dark, the animals, especially the mammals or the birds, they stop singing, and then you can start listening to the insects. And the sound of the insects in the rainforest is something that I've never experienced in anywhere else. It's just music that is gonna, go with you during the night, and it's just amazing. It's beautiful.
Clearly, your devotion to Ecuador is strong, and you love being an ambassador that brings it out to the world, and you want more and more people to come and join you. If someone's interested into coming down there, what is do they fly in through Quito? Will there be like if someone's home right now thinking about registering for Worlds, and I don't think has it opened yet?
Nope, it's going to be opened in January.
Okay.
The 15th of January, we have 120 teams registered, which is a big number. We're hoping to have the same number of Africa, probably. Well, let's see, probably a little bit more, probably a little bit less, but 100 teams will be the goal. And it's going to be open in January. And when they register, they're going to have a plan of payments, and it's going to be very nice. We're not telling exactly the place where they're going to start yet, because Ecuador is small, and we have a lot of teams from Ecuador, so we don't want them to know now where the race is going to start.
Right.
But I can tell you that if you are booking a flight from the United States or from Europe or from Latin America, you can come to Quito, and then you can fly to Cuenca, which is the biggest city in the south, or you can fly to Guayaquil and then drive to Cuenca. It's only 4 hours, 3 hours and a half from Guayaquil to Cuenca. So that's another option available. And then you can rent a car, in Guayaquil, and then you can leave it in Cuenca. And it's pretty easy. Actually, it's pretty easy. And the drive from Quito, if you go by land from Quito to Cuenca, it's only 7 hours and a half. So, and it's beautiful also, because you're going to cross all the high mountains. You're going to see the snow peaks, volcanoes. So it's also beautiful. So it's going to be an experience for the family. Some people have asked me, should I bring my family? Yeah, totally. Cuenca is just an amazing place for, the family. The area, the southern area, has a lot to offer. A lot to offer. So yeah, do it.
I love how and I think just speaking of what they did in Africa was, if you're going to go through all that the time and the challenge of getting there, bring your family along and then do something on either end of it to enjoy the area. And Ecuador, and I will tell you, the experience I had there was absolutely wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better. The race organization was very, very strong. I couldn't ask for a better. The people, we were in Patate, which is in the potato growing region. We saw every ounce of that area. So I do agree with you. I think that's from a destination perspective, that's the way to go. And January 15th is when it opens up, and then more and more will be released as we get closer and closer. And I'm assuming, much like with all the World Championships, you're going to give information on lodging and what they can do and where families can go. That will all follow in the months that are coming up to it.
Yeah, we're going to try to make it, during the first part of the year. So everybody is going to be able to, figure it out and then book with some advance, so they can have good, prices. November is a good month. It's not pretty high season. So yeah, I think that the options are available there. Are gonna be a lot of options also. We have direct flights from Europe through Madrid and Amsterdam, which is pretty easy. Also, you can come from the United States directly from many cities. You can come from Denver, from New York now. There's a new flight directly from New York. There's another one.
Miami and Houston, connect through there too as well.
Also, yeah. And you can go to Panama and then from Panama to Quito, there are plenty of options. And from Latin American teams, especially the Colombians, that's easy. The Colombians normally they drive to Quito, and they come to Ecuador. And from Brazil, Argentina, Chile, they can come. We have many teams from all over the world. We counted yesterday. We have 28 nations represented already in the pre-registration. Yeah,
that's great. That's the way it's supposed to be. So speaking of teams that are pre-registered, any predictions on early race favorites?
Oh no,
It's a little early to have that conversation, but I'm always curious what you think.
Well, we have a lot of strong teams in the top 10 in the ranking. It's not so difficult. You just go to the ranking and then you see who's there. It's a mixture of being there for many races, and also because they are really strong.
Right.
I think that Estonia came once to Ecuador and they didn't finish. They have DNF because they got lost actually in a high area. So they really want to come back and make it better. So I hope that Estonians can do a good job. I'm sure they will. I think that Vida Rai has the good knowledge of the country. Urti has been here for many races. So yeah, strong teams. Obviously, people from Sweden, the teams from Sweden are pretty strong. So I'm sure that they are going to do an amazing job. And from the United States too. We already have 10 teams from the United States, and I really believe that they can, the teams from the United States can do an amazing job here. This is just a wonderful terrain, and they, people and teams are going to enjoy it a lot. Obviously, the Ecuadorians and some, many people have said this to me, that the Ecuadorians have some advantages here because, the language, they know the people, they know how to ask. But this was when we had maps that needed people, to ask for more directions.
Right.
Once you have good maps, all the information is right there. You actually don't need to ask that much. And, you kind of level the thing, you level the field for everybody is the same. So I think that the maps is going to make things different. And it doesn't mean that the Ecuadorian teams are not going to be very strong here. They're still going to be very strong here because we already have many strong teams. I mean, Africa was a good example. We had 2 teams in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. And don't underestimate too the idea that it's their country, they're playing host, but you want to win. There's a sense of national pride, and an Ecuadorian team would love to be the world champion, having won that race in Ecuador. So I think it's going to be. I think the heavy hitters, the Estonias, the Vidoraids, the Safets, those teams, Nature X, all those the squads that we talk about in terms of being very strong, they're going to have their hands full. I think that you could see. When I mentioned to Michael Lindnord, he told me I was wrong for this many, but I think you could see anywhere from 7 to 10 teams that are going to be vying somewhere in there. I know that's a high number, but I think that with the Ecuadorian teams dropped in there, with their teams that are traditionally do very well, the front of the race is going to be really, really challenging. But as we all know, and this will be well covered in the media, that I'm sure, there's the pointy end of the race, but then there's that whole middle pack that gets coverage and gets attention and gets your time. And, and as all those stories are told, I think that's going to be a big part of it. I'm assuming that's a bit of a change for you as the landscape has changed, the amount of media that you'll be expected to produce for the race. That feels like that expectation has increased on race directors over the years in terms of live reporting and updates and the tracking. Do you feel like that's increased for the race director?
Yeah, I feel that has increased. I feel that the movie is going to make things even bigger because the attention is going to be here in Ecuador also because we're going to have teams that raced with Arthur.
Right.
We're going to have, racers, from Sweden that are going to come here. And even the national media is going to be interested in, having some interviews and follow the race because of that. But also, I think that the connections we have now, the technology we have is also something that is making the sport more reachable.
Right.
And you can share, from everywhere. Now we have this system of internet with satellites, and we are using it. So yeah, you can go to a very, very lost TA in the middle of the forest, and then you can have Wi-Fi. You can have Wi-Fi. And then with Wi-Fi there, you can, just tell the world what is happening in that place. That didn't happen, 5 years ago, or probably didn't happen 2-3 years ago.
It's amazing how quick between the Starlink setups and the whole idea of the tracking and the dot watching. I mean, I had the chance to spend some time working up here with one of the expedition races in America with Endless Mountains. I've worked with Rootstock Racing twice on that. It's when you explain to somebody the idea that the people watch the race in real time. There's a whole army of dot watchers that are watching it. But then on top of that, all of the eyes on the page and all the views, those internal metrics have to be so strong. Even myself, like when the episodes that I did around the World Championships are some of my most popular episodes I've had this year, just because so many eyes fall on the race, and then those eyes then go to other sources of information. And to your point, Arthur's going to create that also, the idea that more and more people are going to be interested. And the fact that this is the first really, really big event following the release of the movie on an international scale. I think Ozark Ozark in April is going to benefit from a bounce. I think they'll probably, because they follow right. I mean, Arthur's March 22nd and Ozark is like mid-April, right? 7th or the 14th. It's like, it's right there.
Yeah. But Ozark also is going to help us because, with the movie and Ozark there, many American teams are going to, just, be like, okay, what's the next step? And the next step, the natural next step is to race the world champs.
Right.
So probably, we're going to have many teams from the United States. Now we have 10 pre-registered, and I think that this number can grow up to 15 easily.
Yeah, I agree with that also. You had spoken before about, and I think you're a great interview because you have such a long legacy in adventure racing. You've seen so much over the course of the years. What should the sport be careful of now with the growth that's coming and the fact that we're going to have all these eyes on us? Because the collective community, one reason why we've been able to grow as a community is that we're so niche and we're so kind of set away from the rest of the sporting world. All of a sudden, a lot of the world is going to have their eyes on adventure racing. What danger signs do you think we should be looking out for?
We have to avoid to, fight to each other, and be jealous, of dates. Especially because, we have now 2 big series around, and then we have, this world champs that is natural of, because of the time that's been there. But we have to be careful of not, be jealous of all the races around.
Right.
We need to follow this hype of growing, and it doesn't matter that there are many races. The thing is that if there are many races, we are gonna keep grow the number of teams. And I think that the new association, for example, that is public now, that is around there, is also very good too, because this association can be there on top of things and say to everyone, okay, this should go this way, and probably set the lines, and probably mark some red lines that you don't want to cross. We need to be careful of not changing the sport. I mean, the spirit of the sport, the real beauty of the sport is the diversity it has, and the community, obviously. And being niche is also very important, because being niche makes you a very strong community too. People can talk to each other.
Right. It's small enough that the culture is small enough that I could talk to you and you're in Ecuador, and you could get on the phone and you could talk to South Africa, and you could talk to Europe, and you could talk it exists, that we're small enough that all of the players and all the people everywhere, and nobody's out there off on their own because you have a personal contact with that person.
Totally. Yeah. It's reachable. Everybody's reachable. It's easy. But we also need to grow. I mean, if we look at the opportunities it's bringing, we need to grow. We need to go to the sponsors, to the big ones. We need to go there and see if they, they can support the races and they can support teams.
Right.
And the movie can help a lot, because then you can tell to the big sponsors, like, hey, there's a movie about this. Then you can watch it. You can see what we are talking about.
Right.
And I think that nobody knows, what is exactly what is going to happen, after the movie. But I think that there's an opportunity for teams and for race directors to use this great thing that is happening, of making it public and making everybody knows what is adventure race. So you can just make more business people to, bet on the adventure race. And I think that the sponsorship is something that is going to make this change. It's a mix of what we talked before about communication and how you can, broadcast this and how you can show this to the world, plus the biggest sponsorship. If you can mix the two and make it grow right. in a structural, in a ordered manner, then you have something that we can work with, for the future. Right. So we need to do that. I mean, we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid. I think that the next step here is coming pretty fast. We're going to have a big change in adventure racing pretty soon. And we need to get ready to be there. I mean, we need to take this wave. We need to surf it pretty well. And I think that we're ready. I think we've been there for many years. There are many teams that have been racing for many years and many good race directors. We just need to get together and just talk about what the future looks like.
The adage applies here in many ways that if adventure racing is to be harmed, it's going to be due to what we do to ourselves, not what the outside forces do to us. It's going to be the internal. It's going to be the community that they don't get along. And I agree with you. I think that it's a sport. Race directors are a really good example of that. Like different race directors have different styles when it comes to presenting races. Right. Some are linear in nature. Some have a lot of checkpoints. Some have a lot of transitions. Some have fewer checkpoints with longer sections. And I think that the diversity that you find among race director and race director style is good for the sport, right? You don't want to be too uniform there. But that's an example of the diversity you see in the entire sport when it comes to thought and to action, how you want to present these things. But there are those things that are somewhat non-negotiable. Like race directors would all agree that you have to have a course that is challenging and that it's safe and that there's enough risk involved in that because it's a risky sport, right? We can't sanitize the sport. And by doing all of those things throughout the world in all these different races, it's going to help you creating a uniformity of the sport that is healthy and yet still maintain that diversity. It's a complex thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's a complex thing to do. But to your point, with your two decades of experience, is that you're able to speak to it with some authority because you've been successful over time. It's when somebody new comes in and thinks they know everything, that's where the challenge is going to come. And that may happen because we may get very popular very quickly come March.
Totally. Yeah. And probably something that the new association needs to work on is the safety.
Yes.
Safety is something that we need to standardize. We need to understand that it doesn't matter that if we go to Asia or to South America or to North America, we need to make sure, we have a pretty fast response in any terrain. And that's something that is not happening everywhere. I mean, we still need to work on that. I mean, as a group, as ARWS, and I think that I cannot speak about any other races, but I just think that this needs to get more serious because we're having more races, we're having more new people coming. So yeah, we need to avoid accidents, and as you said, it's a risky sport, but it doesn't has to be risky. You don't have to get there because it is a risky sport. You need to be there because you can feel that the risk, but it has to be a risk that is controlled.
Right.
The race director has to know that he can reach you at any point of the race. It doesn't matter where you are, or because they have the tools they need to do it. Here in Ecuador, it's difficult, to fly helicopters and get there, especially in the rainforest. It's not so easy. So if we need to evacuate somebody, we need to plan accordingly. Sometimes with mules, sometimes with people. Sometimes it's on ground, but we need to plan accordingly. And yeah, I think that's a challenge. It's a beautiful challenge because it's something that we need to start talking about.
I think also we can't take away from the idea that. And this might be an American legal approach to it, is that all of the definition of safety falls upon the race organizer. And I remember when we raced in Scotland, we were over there in 2022, and the first leg of the race was a big long sea kayak, and you were going out to this beautiful island, and you were going back to Mullen. James Thurlow put a great race on there, and during the pre-race captain's briefing, someone asked, "Is there a safety boat on the water?" Right, and there were 40 teams that were going out there, and James's answer was, "Well, yes, there's a safety boat out there, but the reason why you're teams of 4 and the reason why you're in 2 kayaks is that you are each other's safety boat." And the point that he was making was that we cannot offload all of the expectation for safety onto the race director, that there should be a level of understanding in teams to also be proactive in their own safety, making good decisions on the course, when to down climb, when to do these things, when to get in the water, when not to get in the water, but then also to be reactive in safety. That if someone gets injured, if someone is hurt, is there wilderness first aid? Is there basic expectation for a medical kit? Is that kit checked? Like those kinds of things have to work in unison, because a concern that I would have is, and once again, this is very much an American approach to safety, is that we're very, very quick here to say that the organizing body is the sole arbiter of what is safe and what is not safe. But if you choose to do something in an event, and away from adventure racing, you choose to ski, you choose to run a marathon, you agree that you're taking on some sense of risk, and you have to make decisions for yourself. And so that's my feeling about that when it comes to safety, because my concern is that we begin to sanitize the sport. And that's not good for anybody, because there's a subset of our personality that we want the risk. We want to have a trial. We want to feel good about ourselves and do these scary things, because that scratches an itch for a lot of us. That's my feeling about that.
Totally. And I agree with you. The beauty of this sport is that you have to plan where you go, how to reach to the next CP. And that has to be, the same route. So, as a race director, I can tell you that sometimes you can have teams, attacking this CP from many different directions in many different ways. And that's very difficult to control. So yeah, I totally agree that, this basic rule of being 4 in the team, and taking care of each other is probably the best thing, we can still have to have. Once I remember that some people were asking me, okay, let's do this alone. And it's like, no, this can't be done by yourself. Even when, some teams or some team members quit, is risky.
Right.
If you have a 3-person team on a course like an expedition race, is a risky gamble, because you can get to the point where you have to leave one person behind.
Right.
And you don't want that.
Right.
You cannot do this with a couple or just one person. Yeah. There are many aspects in this area of safety, but it's something that is coming, and that's what I'm excited about, because I think that we need to talk about this with the new race directors, with the new generation of adventure races, and I'm excited about the association, because I think the association gets to to talk about this from from a different perspective, from a neutral perspective,
right?
Which is good.
I do agree with that. I think that having a level of neutrality for the International Adventure Racing Association is a good thing, right? We applaud the work that the various organizers have done. We love the fact that they've done to the sport. In many ways, they've kind of carried the sport along. You said before that you thought the sport might disappear at one point. Race directors have been the one that have kept the sport on life support, have kept it alive along the way. And now that the sport is growing, a governing body that is as neutral as those kind of bodies can be, right? Because there's always going to be human contact in there. They're the ones now who are the stewards for the sport. And their job is to keep the sport healthy and to keep the sport moving. And I think that from a high level perspective, which you bring with your years of experience, that makes a lot of sense. I think you're absolutely you're accurate when you talk about it that way. So those challenges are there. Those challenges exist. Give me the other side. We've talked a lot about all the benefits the sport is seeing now with the bigger races, the regional series, the racing in North, Central, South America, Worlds being in Africa, Asia coming online. If you look in the crystal ball and you're looking down the road a little bit, what changes do you see being positive for the sport? What do you see? Do you see greater use of pack rest, for example? Do you see more ropes courses? Do you see longer races? Like, as you kind of grow the sport in your own world, what direction do you think it should grow to keep being healthy?
Probably the first thing will be to make races, or as a race organizer, to organize races for the enjoy of the racers. not for the suffering. It makes a different perspective, different approach. I mean, if you think of a course that is not going to be the toughest, but you have to have your prize in every stage. And this prize can be, a beautiful waterfall, top of a mountain, a wonderful view, or probably, a nice place just you can go and swim. And that's something that race directors are thinking more and more. And
right.
More races in the serial are doing races, just for teams to enjoy. Because we talked about the top teams, and we talk about, probably 20 teams are going to be on the top of the list of the good teams, to try to finish in the first place in Ecuador. But the rest of the teams, 80% there are not going to be there in the race to be on the top or at the podium. They are going to be there to finish and to enjoy. So it's 80%. And that 80%, you need to think about that 80%, probably a little bit more than the rest, because they are paying the bills at the end of the day.
Right. Because of that 80, the 20 get a full long course, right?
Totally. They make it happen.
Right.
To organize a race, an adventure race, an expedition race, a world championship is very, very difficult, time demanding, time consuming, very expensive. So yeah, we need to have more teams involved. And the only way to make this happen is to make races that teams finish. It doesn't matter that they finish last, but they enjoy. And they can tell other people, okay, I loved it, even though I finished at the last place.
So there may be people who listen to the Dark Zone, and a lot of folks come to the Dark Zone who are beginners in the sport. Explain to the world, why would somebody go through all of that effort and time to come in 60th in the world? What happens out there that makes it worthwhile to them? Because on many metrics, if you use a simplistic metric, right, of on the podium or doing really, really well, some people would be like, well, why would you go through all of that to finish in the middle of the pack or the back half of the field, or even the 40% in? What does the sport give to those people that they keep coming back, that they'll go through it all?
Well, you can go to a marathon, probably one of the big ones, and then you can be one out of probably 20 or 25,000 people who finish. But if you finish a world champ, you're going to be one out of 40 or 400. And that's pretty special. Not many people can do that. So it doesn't matter that you finish on the top or at the podium. But if you finish a world champs, if you finish an expedition race, a 4 or 5 day expedition race, you are part of a very small group of people in the world that can say, I finished something like this. And that's probably the best prize, because there are not many people that is doing this because they feel that it's very, very hard. At the end of the day, it's something that if you finish a race like this, you can, you have a story for a lifetime. You change, you change during the race because of the experience, how hard it is, the people you work with or the people you race with. And this experience is a life-changing thing that, you have a story to tell for the rest of your life. That's probably, what drives me. I'm speaking from my perspective. I'm not going to be there for winning. I don't think that I would like to. There are some people that love to go there and race as fast as possible just to win. But my perspective is be there just to enjoy, to finish, and to have a life experience, a life-changing experience for myself.
Well, there you have it. Santiago Lopez, a sage voice about adventure racing, 20-plus year experience, long-distance racer, successful race director, and race director for the upcoming World Championships. Thank you to Santiago for being part of this episode of The Dark Zone. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to the race you're going to give us in Ecuador. To our listeners, welcome to 2024. This is the first of a whole bunch of episodes. Looking for to get 8 in a row in an 8-week period. There, I said it out loud. Now I have to do it. So sit back and relax and enjoy all these episodes of The Dark Zone. Enjoy your winter training for those in the Northern Hemisphere. For those in the Southern Hemisphere, enjoy your warm weather. If you like what you hear on The Dark Zone, please head to your streaming platform of choice and click, subscribe, leave a review, all that stuff. The algorithm seems to like that. And we like having you here. Thanks for being a listener. Be safe and keep on training.